Today I am going to make for you guys one of my favorite things, and that is, well, we call it soft dinner rolls, but really they're just nice soft bread rolls. We have all of our ingredients for our bread. We start with 2 different kinds of flour. Now you can use just white flour to do this, and then you would use about 5 cups or about 600 grams of white flour, 700 grams. I am choosing to go whole wheat with my rolls, but in order to do that without ruining the bread, I split it in half. So I have 350 grams of white flour and 250 grams of whole wheat flour. I also have 70 grams of sugar, and I have 16 grams or 2 tablespoons of active dry yeast. I have 375 milliliters of warm milk. When I say warm, I mean 43 degrees Celsius, about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's the perfect temperature for our yeasties to grow big and strong. And I use a mix of milks. I really love to use buttermilk. It makes breads taste so good, but I also mix in regular non-fat or mager milk. So I've got 250 milliliters of buttermilk and 125 milliliters of regular milk, which equals 375 milliliters. And I've warmed that up in the microwave for exactly 2 minutes. 1 minute, stir, take the temperature. 40 seconds, stir, take the temperature. And 20 seconds, stir, take the final temperature, and it should be absolutely perfect. I also have 75 grams of butter, which I'm going to soften in a little bit, and 1 egg at room temperature, not out of the refrigerator. So the very first thing I'm going to do is buttermilk front and center. I need to add my sugar to the milk, the warm milk. And I had a spoon and it has run away from me, so let me get my spoon. I'm going to stir the sugar into the milk. It's not going to dissolve or anything, don't worry about that. It's just going to be grainy milk. And then to my warm milk, I'm going to add all of my yeast. And if you watched the non-video, we're doing the exact same thing, where we want our yeast to sit in the warm milk and sugar for about 10 minutes until it starts to foam. So while we wait, you can see that I have my mixer ready and all of my ingredients, as well as a dough hook. All of the things I'm going to show you can be done in a bowl with a spoon and then with your hands, but having a nice mixer with a dough hook just makes life a lot easier. The other 2 things that I'm preparing while my yeast prepares is I have taken the biggest bowl I have, and I have smeared the sides and the bottom with a paper towel and olive oil. We're going to put our bread into this bowl to let it rise, and we want olive oil on the edges so it doesn't stick. I have also prepared the pan that I'm going to bake my rolls in. Now this is a very big pan. It's hard to show in the whole camera, but this pan is the biggest pan that they sell at Carrefour. I think that it is 13 by 20 some odd centimeters. We should be able to fit 20 rolls into this pan when we're all finished. And I have sprayed my pan with this stuff, this lovely baking spray, which means that things don't stick. But you can also coat your pan in olive oil and it will do the exact same thing. We are back 10 minutes later and this is looking perfect. It's so perfect. So here's what we're going to do. We have to start with 3 cups of flour. So I'm going to start with my white flour. And what we're going to do is we're going to add the white flour to the bowl of our mixer, all of it. And then we're going to add just about everything else except for the wheat flour. So we're going to add all of the yeast and the milk and the sugar using our spatula to make sure it all comes out, because some of it's going to stick to the sides. So all that goes in. Beautiful. Then we're going to add our butter, probably again with our spatula. Our softened butter, mine's even a little bit melted, but that's okay. It's still going to mix up really nicely. Then we want our salt. And finally, we want our egg. which I'm gonna crack right now. A little bit more. Pop that open, and in she goes. Now, we're going to use our dough hook to mix everything together. And a dough hook is not fantastic for beginning mixing like this. It's okay. We're gonna let it mix on a low speed for about 2 minutes and then come back and scrape our bowl. We've let this mix on low speed for about 2 minutes, and you can still see there's all sorts of flour everywhere. So all we're gonna do is take our bigger spatula and we're gonna give the mixer a little bit of help to get all that dry flour in contact with the wet ingredients. As soon as we scrape our spatula off, which I like to do on the dough hook, then we're gonna mix this now on medium speed for 2 minutes. Feel free to use your kitchen timer or your oven timer to get the exact timing right. And now we have no more dry white flour. Now this next part is just a little bit tedious, so I won't go through the whole thing with you on the video. What you're gonna do is you're gonna take your whole wheat flour, you're gonna put 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 of the spoonfuls of wheat flour into this bowl, and then you're gonna mix it on low for 2 minutes, and then mix it on medium for 2 minutes, and then you add 4 more spoonfuls. Mix it on low for 2 minutes, mix it on medium for 2 minutes, until all of your flour is gone. A quick note as I'm in the middle of adding my flour. After you've added it the first time, you have to be very careful not to spray flour everywhere. So what I like to do in the very beginning is pulse. That means turning it on and off really quickly, like this. And I like to do that until I can't see flour jumping around anymore. Otherwise, I'm liable to get a flour shower. So you can see here that I've let it now mix for its last 2 minutes on medium speed. And the dough is very elasticy. It's a little bit warm from adding the warm milk. And it's looking pretty darn good. I think I'm gonna let it go for another 2 to 3 minutes. Do a few of the dishes. That's just gonna help it to stop sticking a little bit more to the sides, and then it will be ready to put in our oiled bowl to rise. 2 more minutes. So here we have our beautiful, most perfectest bread dough, and we have a bowl that's been nicely coated in olive oil. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the dough from here and put it in here. I'm only going to touch it with my fingertips. I'm not gonna grab, I'm gonna pull from the sides of the bowl. Something similar to, just a second. Maybe I can get a little bit more light on this. There we go. Similar to the naan bread, if you saw that video, where I am just pulling from the sides. It's like breaking it off of the sides and then letting it fall into my oiled bowl. Ooh, that's hard to do with one hand. Get a mom or dad to help. It's so difficult. There we go. Okay. Let gravity take it into the bowl. There we go. Now all I'm going to do is I want it to have some olive oil on all of its sides. So I'm just like letting the stickiness of the dough help me to make it into a little ball. That's all I'm doing. Now that's perfect. I'm going to cover this loosely in clear foil. I'm going to cover it loosely in clear foil, and then I'm going to let it rise for about an hour and a half in a warm place, not too warm, but not cold, and with no wind or drafts. So we'll see you in an hour and a half. We are back 1.5 hours later, and look at how big the dough is. If you remember how big our very first ball of dough was and how much this has expanded, it's basically filling the bowl. So here comes my favorite part of making yeast doughs. You get to punch down the dough and then get your hand out of there. It'll stick just a little bit and that's okay. So we've deflated it and I have put some flour onto my work surface. I have extra flour here and I'm going to empty my dough out onto the counter, still using my fingertips just like we've learned from other times, to just loosen the dough from the bowl and roll it out onto the counter. Now, to get 20 evenly sized rolls, we're going to weigh how much this dough is. Usually it's about 1.2 kilos, but we're gonna see. I have my scale off camera here. I'm just gonna pick up the dough very gently and put it back in the bowl. Today it weighs 1,156 grams, and I've got my calculator off here, so 1,156 divided by 20, we're gonna have rolls that are about 57 or 58 grams each. And I'm gonna be using my scale to divide up my dough into rolls. And the reason I do that is because then they'll all bake evenly. So here's what you need. You need your dough. You need a nice sharp knife or something like this. This is my favorite thing right here to use whenever I'm working with bread dough. You'll need a kitchen scale so that you can plop some down onto the kitchen scale each time and weigh it. And I always put a little bit of flour, just a little bit of flour on my kitchen scale. And then finally, you'll need your pan that you're going to put your rolls in. And I'm just going to keep that right off to the left so that I can always just plop my rolls down in it. So here we go. I always start by cutting my dough in half, just because it's easier to work with that way, and then just push the other half out the side. And then I can just kind of guess, how much do I think 57 grams will be? Well, let's guess that much. So here's what I'm starting with. I plop that down on my scale. That is 68, too much. Cut a little off. There we go. That's exactly 57. And then what I want to do with this little circle that I've made, I want to just tuck it under a little bit with my fingertips and make it nice and round. That's all I'm going to do, very gently. And then I'm going to take this dough and I'm going to put it in the corner of my pan. And I'm going to do 4 across and 5 the long way. Here we have our little circly rolls, and these are ready to sit a little bit more. Yes, baking bread takes a long time. I'm going to cover this in clear wrap very loosely, and I'm going to let these rise for another hour to an hour and a half, probably about an hour. So we'll see you in 60 minutes. I should also mention that at about 20 to 30 minutes left in this rise, you're going to preheat your oven to 190 degrees Celsius, but make sure to look at the description because it could be 175. I'm not looking at my recipe right now. I think it's 190 though. Our rolls are finally ready to bake, but first we have to make sure that we brush them with some melted butter very gently. We don't want to deflate our big puffy rolls. So we're just going to do a little brushing. Now you can leave the rolls plain with just the butter on top like this, but I'm going to show you something I really like to do with all of my rolls. Sometimes I'll brush the tops with sesame seeds. This time though, because these are whole wheat rolls, I actually have a multi-seed mix that I bought from Carrefour, and we're going to sprinkle those on top as well. Here's our seed mix, and we're just going to sprinkle, sprinkle, sprinkle as much or as little as you want. It just adds a little color and a little texture to your finished roll. All right, so now our oven has been preheated to 190 degrees Celsius, and we're going to pop these in the oven for about 12 minutes or until they're pretty dark golden brown. See you in 12 minutes. And here we have 20 beautiful golden brown whole wheat sandwich rolls. Now, I had to bake them an extra 3 minutes because my oven is a little bit hotter in the front than in the back, and so I baked them for 10 minutes, rotated them, and then baked them for 5 more to get this absolutely wonderful color. Now what we'll do is we'll let these cool for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then we need to take them out of the pan or they sweat and get soggy on the underside, so they've got to cool all the way around. So what I usually do is I will take cooking paper and I will make a nice big layer on top of my cooling rack, and then when I take these out in 10 minutes, I'll lay them there and let them cool the rest of the way. They can be stored for about 4 to 5 days without going bad, as long as you put them in a container that is covered, like a plastic container or something like that. Then they're going to last you for about a week. Enjoy.